If nobody talks about you, then you are nobody. Then you are nobody. Remember, child.
All right, everyone, welcome. I am Priestess Osun, Reverend Priestess Osun Funke Iyanifa. And today we are going to talk about karma and how or if karma connects to and governs our practice in Orisha hoodoo, and other African spiritual systems. So before I get started, I told you guys earlier that I want this to be interactive. I want to hear from you. Does anyone want to discuss with me now what their understanding of karma is? Not all at once, you guys. Okay, yes. And if you raise your hand, because I'm going to be asking you questions, so to avoid confusion, just use the function on Zoom that allows you to raise your hand. Please do that. And it would be my absolute pleasure to interact with you. So we have Oya Petu hand went up first, or she's first in my list. So, Priestess, talk to me. What is it that you understand about karma?
It reminds me of a situation when I was younger, because the concept to me is just like what you put out comes back to you. And it just reminds me of a time where I actually like found some money because I borrowed like colored pencils from someone, and I found some money in there, and I thought about it for a millisecond, like, oh, I could use this money, but I was like, no, 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 let me give her her money. And I gave it to her. She was so grateful. She was like, oh, I really needed this. And, literally the same amount that I gave to her that I found, a week later, a family member I hadn't talked to in like 20 years sent me the exact same amount that I had found and given back to the rightful owner. So it it was just an early lesson. This was like when I was a teenager. So it was just an early lesson about like, if you put things out, whether it's seemingly good or bad, it will come back to you in either the same amount or tenfold or threefold, however you look at it. So I think it's just the idea of energy doesn't go away, it just gets transmuted. So like the energy you put out will come back to you in some kind of capacity. That's what I think about when I think of karma.
So I'm gonna dig in and pick a little bit because you said a few things that I'm curious about. You said whatever you put out will come back threefold. And so we've all heard of this threefold rule, and
Right?
which I that is a, as best I can tell, it's a Wicca concept, the threefold rule, which has nothing to do with us again. But people, you will hear people talk about it all the time. And if you do something to somebody, or you hex somebody, or you do this or do that, it's gonna come back to you three times. Um, I want to know, why do you say that? Where does that come from?
That comes from my original like learnings about Wicca, witchcraft, like anything to do with the various types of spirituality. Like I've studied a little bit kind of across the board, but I find that that's a more common concept. And even though it does come from like Wicca or witchcraft, a lot of people do think of threefold. You put it out and it will be multiplied and come back to you, whether it's seemingly good or bad. But that's not a concept, like you said, that is an Ifa.
Right. It's not an African concept whatsoever. Um, that I'm aware of, and you guys know that I am a religious scholar. That concept is decidedly European, and I'm going to be honest with you, not only is it a European concept, but it is a rather recent phenomenon. It's one of those things that was born and propagated on the internet, I dare say. There may be some readings. I don't spend a lot of time reading European religious text. That's just never been my jam. There may be some reference to it in ancient, text or older text, but it's definitely something that I began to hear and see a lot of with the advent of internet witching. And I'll get into that threefold rule and whatnot, and how it doesn't apply to what we do. But I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification since you did mention that. The next person who had their hand up is Priestess Omi Jimmy Lua. Hi, Prince.
He said hi back. I don't know if you heard him because I just say hi. Say hi. Say hi, Ia.
Hi, gorgeous. How are you?
Say anything. Okay, go get some clothes on. Sorry about that, you all.
No problem.
So my understanding of karma is a little bit different, but similar. And I'm not sure when or where I learned this. It's just kind of always been a concept on my Mexican side of our family, that the thought that you give the most credence to is the thought that will manifest. And that kind of intertwines with karma in a way that you get to select your own thoughts, basically. So when you think good things happen. When you think negative things, the negative things happen, and whatever you believe is true, right? It is the way that I understood karma, not necessarily what you do, but what you think. And I just wanted to hear your feedback on that, if karma has anything to do with that, because that was my early understanding of karma before I started hearing about what you put out in the physical. It was always started with what you think.
As a man thinketh, so is he, right? That kind of that thought system. I think that is in alignment with a lot of indigenous thought patterns. I don't have an issue with it. I will tell you that is not karma. That is not what the owners of this idea of karma, the people out of which this concept comes from, that is not what karma is. However, what you have described as a man thinketh, so is he, is very much in alignment with African thought patterns and spiritual systems. Everything begins with a thought and then becomes, a word or an action, which sets the ball rolling. So thought absolutely impacts what we experience and what we create in the world, the conditions that we create for ourselves and other people. The one thing, and I'm going to go ahead and mention it here because it applies, but hopefully I will not fail to mention it later. In African spiritual systems, we are not in the practice of African spirituality, okay, Orisha Hoodoo specifically. We're not only concerned with what we experience and how we feel, we are very much concerned with how we make others feel, how we impact the experiences of others. So what you think is going to influence not only where you spend your time and what you put effort into creating, but it's also going to affect how you treat other people, how other people are received by you, and how other people are affected by you. And so rather than this far-reaching idea of what you do is going to come back, which is what karma is often thought to be, we are in the eternal now. As indigenous people, we are in the eternal now. All we have is now. So if I think something that's messed up, then messed up things are going to come from that thought because they are born out of that frequency. So it's a right now kind of a thing versus in your next lifetime. So it's probably helpful for me now to just go ahead and paraphrase what karma is, or the definition or understanding of karma that I'm working with for the purposes of this talk today. I'm talking about, and this is from the Hindu practice, okay? You will find versions of karma in other Eastern spiritual systems, Buddhism, so on and so forth. But I'm talking specifically about the Hindu understanding of karma, which basically says that your next life will be influenced by your actions or inactions in this lifetime. Simplified version, okay? Very simple version of what I'm talking about. So even the idea that you do something fucked up and then next week you're gonna get a flat tire, that's not even in alignment with karma, but that is how Hollywood has remixed it and has us thinking about it. That's how internet philosophers and YouTube University has remixed it and and given it to us. But actual karma and the way that it is taught and understood in Hinduism has much more to do with your future incarnations than it does with the present, which is why ultimately it does not apply to us as African spiritualists, because we are concerned with the eternal now. We know, if you reference the 16 principles of Ifa, for example, that this is a trip to the mall. This life, this incarnation is a trip to the mall. We have left Orun, we've left heaven, we've left our egg bay, we've left our connection to the creator, and we are here for a short time to get what we need, right? We're not here for a long time, but for a good time. We came here to this marketplace to get what we need, to learn some lessons, to make people's lives good, to love, to eat, to taste food, to have a physical experience. And when we've done all that we agreed that we would do when we came here, then we will rejoin our ancestors. So the eternal now is what we are concerned with. How does it affect this experience that we're having now, not next lifetime? And also understanding that in Ifa, the system of Ifa teaches us that there are only two things that cannot be changed in our lifetime, right? That is the day that you will enter this realm, this physical experience, and the day that you will rejoin your ancestors. Everything in between can be changed. It can be forecast with divination, and it can be changed through ebo or sacrifice and behavior modification. So you're not subject to anything in terms of your ability to impact your destiny. The only thing you're subject to is you, your willingness to heed the advice that comes through Ifa, your willingness to have your divinations and then follow them, your willingness and ability to do the ebo. But the general formula is there will be a person, right? An entity, because sometimes this person can be a cooking pot, or sometimes this entity can be a basket that's full of holes, right? But there is an entity who has an issue, and this entity has gone to, and they'll have a beautiful flowery name, right? The basket is full of holes. The cooking pot cooks well, but doesn't like to be hot. You know, they'll have these names like that. And then they will go to a babalawo for a divination because they're having a problem. So the pot is full of holes, went to the babalawo, and then the babalawo will have a beautiful name. You know, the babalawo sees beyond their seeming. That would be his name. And he did a divination for the cooking pot because the cooking pot was concerned with whatever their concern was, right? So that's the beginning formula of the Odu. So you have an entity or a person who has a problem who goes to a babalawo for assistance. The babalawo does a reading. They access the wisdom of Ifa. They find out what the problem is, and then they give the concerned party an ebo to do. Okay, they give them a solution, which is going to contain an ebo, usually something that they need to start or stop doing, and a group of Orisha that they need to make offering to or recognize. Okay, and then either in that Odu, that concerned individual either takes the advice and does it, and their problems are solved, or they don't. And then we learn of how horrible things become because they fail to follow the advice of Ifa. So that is how the holy Odu are what this whole practice of Ifa is based on. So it is woven into our practice that you have the ability to change any and everything, to influence, not even change, but to influence what is happening and what will happen to you, okay? And you do that by behavior modification. You're going to stop doing something, or you're going to start doing it. You're going to make appeasements and offerings to the Orisha, who are I like to call them fingers on the hands of God, but realistically, they are creator gods with a small g, right? Who create this experience that we enjoy. They influence nature, they influence our roads being open and our ability to see and do and experience things. Okay, so you're going to change or impact what you experience by working with, honoring, listening to, following the energetic urgings of Orisha. And then you are going to do an ebo, which is to push energy, whether it be through animal sacrifice, whether it be through the sacrifice of something dear to you, money, for example, right? A lot of times an ebo will be like, you have to also include X amount of dollars that you must give away or give to the Babalawo, or sometimes you may have to take your favorite dress, right, and give it to a stranger, or different things like that, where that sacrifice, that giving up of something valuable to you, then creates space for you to energetically experience what it is that you are seeking to experience. Does that make sense? I just kind of like all over the place did my whole lecture, but I'm going to go through the points and make sure that I that I didn't leave anything out. So karma is an Eastern concept that actually doesn't exist in traditional African practices, and Ifa in particular. Okay, and I've told you why that is. And you don't just have to take my word for it, although you can, because I am a religious scholar, I'm a theologian, and I'm actually a PhD candidate studying comparative religions. So I'm not just telling you, I know what I'm talking about. And karma is one of those things that has been elevated to our everyday consciousness by Hollywood, by the media, by white supremacy. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Why do I say it's a concept that was given to us by white supremacy? Because karma is very much in alignment with slaves, obey your masters. Okay? Karma is very much in alignment with that. Don't make any trouble. Be long suffering. Okay? Be good. No matter what comes at you, because we can't control our life. Is God, this old man with a long beard sitting up on a cloud somewhere, throwing darts at us just to see how we respond. And if you're good and you don't fight back and you don't make too much noise and you turn the other cheek just to be slapped on that side too, then when you come back next time, your life might be a little bit easier. Bullshit. Bullshit. We were not created to suffer. I was not created to suffer. Okay? My ancestors, dearly departed and ancient and elevated, did not go through the things that they went through. They did not scrub floors. They did not hoe rows in the garden. They did not do all of those things that they did so that I can be turning the other cheek and getting slapped around in this lifetime. They did what they did so that I can live in comfort, so that I can enjoy this experience, so that I can become the highest version of myself and pave a road that will in turn make it easier for them to walk when they come the next time. Because referring to the 16 principles of Ifa, we know that we continue to reincarnate. And usually we do that through the same bloodlines when possible, right? And so again, the only way that I see karma possibly connecting to what we believe as African people is in that next generation kind of a thing. But we would call that a generational curse. And we would also say that it's not that it's an energetic stamp that you are damned to experience. It's more likely to be the way you are energetically set up to continue to do the same stuff over and over again, right? So it's mathematics, but not addition, or it's not addition that I want to say. Obviously, I'm not a math person. So it's still mathematics that governs what I'm talking about, but it's the sum, not necessarily the individual pieces that go into it, right? So you're not subject to experience this in a cyclical way, aside from the fact that you aren't making the changes that you need to in your understanding and your walk to prevent those things from happening to the generations that come behind you, not because they're damn too experienced, but because it's the house that you've built. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you don't fix yourself so that you can create a wider road, then when your descendants come, they're going to have to shrink themselves, or they're going to have to turn sideways because this road that you built is too narrow. It's not because they were terrible people in their last lifetime. It's because you were the architect of this road that they started out walking. And so either you do what you're supposed to do to make it easier, or guess what? That skinny little road is going to be a part of your destiny the next time, because you have to do what you need to do to open it. That's very different than you are mean to somebody in line at the grocery store and you come back as a frog next lifetime, right? Several people have their hands up, so let me take some questions. Omoware, question, comment, concern?
So I actually have it written down because I was going to say exactly what you said about generational curses and how that relates to karma, and how when we pick our destiny in Olorum, it's because we needed to learn something. We needed to come here to get something. And so it's kind of like a misinterpretation or a colonization of that thought, and also a misinterpretation of breaking taboos, I feel like, because when you break a taboo, bad things can happen. And even though breaking the taboo may not inherently be something bad, it could be something simple as eating peanuts. But because we know we're not supposed to do it, doing it has consequences. And so it's basically a very skewed misinterpretation of doing things that you're not supposed to do, whether you know them or not. I feel like that's probably more in alignment with what karma has become. But initially, it was based on our system of, you have these things that you're not supposed to do in your Odu. Some of us, in mine, like, I'm not supposed to do any harm at all, ever. I can't do anything wicked. And so people who have that similar thing in their Odu, that is basically what karma is. If you do something bad will happen. Because if I break that Odu, who knows what's going to happen? I could die. I could get into a car accident. One of my children could die. Like, all the things could happen simply because I did something wicked. And it's just a big misinterpretation of what some of our Odus actually say.
Absolutely. And you bring up a point. I'm so proud of how you are connecting the dots. It feels good as a teacher to see you doing that. You mentioned taboo, and that is just yet another example of the wisdom of Orunmila and Ifa. Not only are you not subject to far-reaching consequences from things that you do today, but you're given a roadmap. Okay, so you can check in and take a snapshot energetically of what you're experiencing by way of divination or consultation. But you ain't even got to do all that, because Ifa will tell you, for those with ears to hear, what things you need to not do. Don't eat this. Don't wear this. Don't behave in this fashion. Avoid this person if you see them. Do not come back from the farm at this time. Matter of fact, don't you even go to the farm. If you farm, don't grow this. Like, Ifa is very specific about how you can live your best life, which is, again, why I say I was not put here to suffer. I was not put here to suffer. The wisdom of Ifa would not allow for me to suffer. If I suffer, it's because of the choices that I have made. the things that I have done or failed to do, because the wisdom of Ifa ensures success. The wisdom of Ifa ensures success. If you do, Ifa cannot lie. If you do what Ifa tells you to do, whether it be through a consultation and you hearing the Odu and hearing the Ebo and following the Ebo, Abaru, Aboye, Aboshishe, or whether it be through you following your taboos and not doing those things that you were told not to do because they won't energetically benefit you, you can just do those two things. Hear the Ebo and comply and follow your taboos. And guess what? You're going to have a good life. You're going to have a good life. That's the way it's set up. Another thing, the concept of hating, okay? The concept of jealousy and envy is going to be a far more prominent issue for us as practitioners of African spirituality than karma, because we understand as people who thrive in community, who only exist in community, we understand that it is the influence of those in your community that plays the biggest part in your life, rather than some sky daddy who's so far away building and destroying the cosmos to be influencing what you experience on a day-to-day. Do you understand that? So we experience God first through other people, just like that prayer about Isheshe. It is the footsteps of your mothers and your fathers that lays your path, that creates that path for you, more so than the cosmic forces of nature that create all that there is. But I'm not going to get into that because cosmology is a whole nother aspect unto itself. But what I am going to tell you is that the idea that your experience can be derailed or impacted in a very negative way is going to be much more closely related to the people that you have to interact with in your family and in your community than it ever will be an energetic enigma such as karma. And so, yes, you need to be concerned with how you behave. You need to be concerned with the impression that you leave on people. You need to be concerned with whether or not you're selfish. You need to be concerned with how you affect other people, because how you affect other people is going to determine how they affect you. Even when we're talking about powerful concepts like Iyami, for example, the power of Iyami is in the gut, right? The feeling, the visceral temperature that Iyami has regarding a particular person or situation, right? And so it's very important to understand that how you make entities feel, your spiritual reputation, as it were, your impact on other people is going to have much more of an immediate effect on how you experience life than God being mad at you and punishing you. We don't have a God that punishes. That's a Christian concept. The God and the devil and God being mad at you. You don't know how many times, well, not even times because it's innumerable, but I'm constantly having to unravel those thought forms and those thought cycles when I talk to people who think that their ancestors are mad at them. They think that things aren't working out with them because their ancestors are angry. We're talking about energetic clouds of consciousness. We're not talking about people. We're not talking about folks who have opinions about the dress that you wear today or the dude that you sleep with tomorrow. We're talking literally about a cloud of consciousness to which you alone are given access to by virtue of your bloodline. And your access will either be granted because your behavior your thoughts, your ability to see are in alignment with the frequency of this thought pattern. And so you have access to this cloud of consciousness, rather, not thought pattern. You have access to this cloud of consciousness by virtue of where you are, versus you're out of alignment. You can't see, you can't hear, you don't know what's going on because you're doing everything that you should not do. And so your access is denied. So you ask a question and you can't get the answer. You can't access it. You need a road to open so that your life can be easier, and you're not where you need to be to have that opening, to even see the rays of the sun as they shine through the clouds and bask upon you. Like you can't even see it because you are doing things that you're not supposed to do, or failing to do things that you need to do. Okay. And so your ancestors are not angry with you. God is not mad at you. You are out of alignment, full stop. And that's what it is. And so, again, karma doesn't apply to us because we're not concerned about what's going to happen next lifetime. We're talking about right now, how can you remove these blockages? By listening, by tapping in, by hearing, by following your Odu, by avoiding your taboos, by thinking of how you impact other people and taking the time to do the shadow work so that you can be aware of how you are influencing other people and how you're making other folks feel, so that you can stop with the things that are not productive and you can do more of what is. Having the divinations and the consultations to understand where you are and what's happening around you energetically, and being honest when someone says, okay, you need to stop the dumb shit, and not acting like you don't know what somebody is talking about when you're having a divination or when you're being counseled and they're calling you on your deficits, right? Being honest, knowing before I even have to say something to you. You should know yourself better than anybody. When I do readings and consultations for people, it's rare that I say something and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And 9 times out of 10, when they pretend to not know what I'm talking about, they lying. And if they don't, it's just a few steps that they need to take mentally to get to what I'm talking about, because sometimes people are very unaware of who they are and where they are and what's going on. But generally, when I do a reading, I hear, okay, throughout the whole reading, I knew it. I saw that. I said that. Okay, thank you, priestess. You're right. Because I'm just helping you to make decisions about things that you're already aware of, things that you already know, particularly those of you who are priests, particularly those of you who have dedicated your life to understanding better. Before you can venture to help anybody else, before you can do a reading for anyone, before you can mix a tea for anybody, you got to be able to understand who you are and where you are and what's going on with you and why things aren't working out for you. Okay, I don't want to get off target. Does anybody have any questions about that little bit? Y'all, I have so many points that I haven't even talked about because I just started talking. Let me bring this back. Okay, if you have a question, put your hand up. Okay, Oya Petu?
It's not so much a question, but it does tie into what you're talking about, taboos, like karma, taboos, and church hurt. I feel like they all kind of go under the same umbrella. Like one of my taboos is I'm not supposed to spoil someone's character. And that could be kind of a subjective, like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, but I think growing up and being in the church, it's always like, God is, and everybody's going to beat you down if you get out of line in any kind of way. Whereas taboos are like, hey, don't do this, and you really are going to have a good life now and also going to make it better for your bloodline. So I think a lot of people tie karma and church hurt into the same like group, and they're not really able to get past this concept that God is really up in heaven judging every single little thing that you're doing, and you're going to burn in hell or have a terrible life or have a terrible next life if you get out of line in any kind of way. Like, we don't really realize that this is a white supremacist concept. So I love that you talked about that, because I never really looked at it like that before.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are concepts of white supremacy. And neither one of them have anything to do with us. Church hurt, that ain't our stuff. The church was hurtful from the beginning. When our ancestors were beat over the head with the Bible, that's where church hurt began. And everything else coming out of that, talk about karma, talk about generational curses, everything else coming out of that is a result of that, because hurt people, right? Okay. D. Ross, welcome. Face I don't recognize. You have a question. Let me spotlight. Welcome.
Good morning, afternoon, depending on where you at. Thank you guys for having me. This is my very first time in here. I've really been looking forward to it. But I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand earlier, and I wanted to touch on a couple of things that you had said. Yeah, I did the direct in the messenger saying that I don't really believe in karma, because I come from a rough background, and I was born into that background. So it's like, okay, well, how in the world did I create all this karma on myself? I mean, of course, I didn't know a lot back then. I didn't know that I was going through hard times. When I got older, I realized it, and I look at things like, my dad was in the military, so on and so forth. And like, there was no way it was supposed to be crazy for me, but it was, so I don't believe in doing things, the things that you do coming back on you onefold, let alone threefold. I do believe that if you go against the grain in life, if you go ahead and you touched on that as well, I do believe if you go against the grain in life, if you go in the direction that you're not supposed to go, if your gut instinct is telling you, if you just feel it in your soul, like I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing, then something that you don't want to happen to you is definitely going to happen to you. And I can testify to that over and over and over again. I still do it to this day. I still do it to this day, things that I know I shouldn't be doing. And I'm not talking about going out here causing harm on people. I'm talking about dealing with people that my soul is telling me that I shouldn't be dealing with. And as I deal with these people and I deal with these situations, if I wake up and don't want to go to work one day, knowing I need to have myself there, something's going to happen. I'm gonna miss something. There's something that should happen, something that's good that should fall in my lap is not going to fall in my lap. Not to mention I missed that day's pay. So, yeah. And that's what I wanted to touch on. Also, I wanted to say, one thing that I did think about, one thing that I did consider when it comes to karma and being born into crazy situations, into bad situations, is the fact that I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe we are reincarnated. And sometimes I do wonder if I'm paying for something, when I'm going through a situation, or when I was going through those. Now I'm older now, so I've had time to create, my situations. But I was wondering, like, when I was a baby, when I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old and things happened, I actually died, you know what I mean? Before I was in a coma for 2 months, so when these things happen, I'm just like, I wonder if it was something that I did do in my past life, but that's the closest that I come to believing in karma and you reap what you sow. And the Christian philosophy's organization has a employee handbook and a code of conduct. And that's how I look at that. I do believe that all of that is just really just pushing slave tactics on us, and yeah, I'm not with that at all. So, but that's all I want to say for now. I don't want to hold y'all.
Thank you
Thanks
for your comment. You said several things that I'm actually going to touch on. Welcome again. I hope this will not be the last time we see you. Let me just dig right into a couple of things that you said. Very perceptive for you to bring up the idea of destiny and the idea that there are universal laws. There are universal laws, okay? It has nothing to do with karma. It has to do with the fact that you're trying to fly when you are meant to walk. There are certain things that just should not be done, like the reckless murder of other human beings, reckless harm of other human beings, expecting to receive something when you haven't done any work, right? So you mentioned not going to work. You don't go to work, you're not going to get paid. Your check is going to be short. You may not be able to meet your obligations. That's not karma, that's mathematics. And guess what? You know going into it that if you don't go to work, you're not going to get paid. So that's not a spiritual concept. That's not spiritual forces at work against you. That's you trying to act like you cannot go to work and still have everything that you need, right? So we have to be intelligent. We have to be wise. We have to understand that this reality that we experience is being held together by mathematics, right? It's being held together by formula. It's being held together by things like gravity, okay, and temperature, and the recognition of light and how it's bent, which affects what we see, right? By physics and the density of matter and things being solid or gas or liquid, right? These are universal law. These are things that impact us. They have nothing to do with karma. It's just the way it is because this is where we're at, right? It's like the difference between going into a red room or a blue room. They're going to be different by virtue of the fact that they are red or blue. Okay. And so in this physical world, you're going to be subject to the laws that govern physical experiences. Okay. Cause and effect being one of them. So again, cause and effect is going to be more pertinent and more applicable to us than karma ever would be. You also said something else, Dee, about being born into kind of a situation that you didn't ask for, right? Experiencing things that were beyond your control, especially as a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old. I want to challenge you to understand that, again, we being community organisms, community-based organisms, right? Many times the things that we experience are not for our own benefit. Neither are they to our own detriment. They're just things that happen to us to help someone else, right? To help them grow, to help them understand, to help them overcome. So sometimes the things that you experience are so that other people can become their full selves. Sometimes the things that you go through are intended to help you grow muscle, spiritual muscle, to become stronger, to see. You know, you said that you were in a coma, that you died before. What if that experience allowed you to see beyond the veil? What if it what if it opened you up to spiritual experiences, supernatural experiences? You know, that could be one of the reasons, right? Something had to break with this reality in order for you to turn on those gifts. So we experience a lot of things for a lot of different reasons. And many times it's not about you, right? Now, that's a common phrase that we hear a lot. It ain't about you, but that is so true because most of the time it's not. We are not put here for our own enjoyment. In fact, the way to enjoy your life the most, the way to benefit from your blessings the most, the way to be the most blessed is going to be a blessing to other people. It is through your service and the care that you take with other people that you are blessed. You want to be well taken care of as an elderly person. You want to eat every day. You want to be clean and washed. You want things around your home to be repaired. You want to live well as an elder. Guess how you do that? Be good to your kids. Treat your kids right. That's how you enjoy life as an elder. That's not karma. That's math. That's common sense. You want somebody to take care of you when you are older, take care of them when they can't take care of themselves, right? You want somebody to treat you in a reciprocal way in a relationship. You want to be loved. You want to be heard. You want to be cared for. You want to be considered. Be considerate with your partner. Listen to your partner. Be what you want to experience. It's not karma, it's common sense. but it ain't common no more. Priestess Omowaware.
I don't know if you saw my comment in the chat, but I literally basically just said what you just said, where I said, I think we choose our lives for the lesson, not because we feel we deserve to suffer, but because the experience will give us a perspective that we are supposed to use to help other people and speak from a place of experience.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of intelligence without getting into the creation story, of the Yoruba people or any other people for that matter. There's a lot of intelligence that goes into this experience, what we experience, right? Those of you who are going to participate in the Ella initiation that we're going to do for New Year's will understand this more, because a big part of recognizing and receiving the energy of Allah is understanding that there are certain things that you are meant to see, and that are meant to be filtered through wisdom and through the knowledge that we have acquired. Okay, so I'm trying to get somewhere. You have the situation that you're born into. Okay, we do have some influence over that, but it's in a cosmic way, and it's before we reach this experience. So I won't go there. But there is mythology. I'll just call it mythology for lack of a better way to explain it. But there's mythology that revolves around us choosing our head, right? Us standing in line and selecting our head, and your head being your destiny and everything contained in it. Whether you're born female or male, whether you're born Black or Asian, whether you are short or tall, whether you are born in Cincinnati or Honolulu, all of these things are written in your head. And so there's an understanding that we do have some influence, and we pick our head. Like, the heads are created. We don't have control over that, but you can pick this one or that one, right? But let's just say we got our heads, however we do that, and we come here. Well, you're going to be born into a particular set of circumstances. And other than you agreeing to come, you don't have a whole lot of influence over how you show up, how you're born, right? You don't know where you're going to. You're not able to change that. And then there's also the egg bay phenomenon, right? Where we have family and we have souls that we're connected to, that we are related to in family and relationship with in heaven, right? And we decide that we're all going to come to earth at the same time. And so the greater part of our lives is trying to find those individuals, and everybody coming through when there was an opening, when they had the opportunity to, right? So it's like you're holding hands, but then you jump off the cliff and we land where we land, and we try to find each other. So there's that whole phenomenon, right, of egg bay, where we're in these different relationships and we're in these different situations and circumstances, all the while trying to find one another, because in those relationships with our egg bay, we are strongest, right? We are most comfortable. We are happiest. We are at home. So you have the situation that you're born into, you have your egg bay and this unconscious desire to reconnect with egg bay. But then you also have external influences, government, right? Political climates, actual climate, right? Climate change, weather, natural disasters, so on and so forth, that actually impact us, as well as we have to experience all of that while making decisions from moment to moment, okay? The point that I'm making is you have so much control over what you experience. If it's not the weather, if it's not the day you were born and who you were born to, everything else after that, you can change. there's a couple of examples, you know, that just that come to my mind. Like when I think about the model Alec Weck, for example, right? She's Sudanese, born in Sudan. If you know anything about Sudan, particularly the early 2000s, what was going on over there, land being taken, people, mass genocide, people being killed, horrible political situation in Sudan, people starving, all that kind of stuff. Here you have this beautiful creature, Alec Weck, created in the image and likeness of the Most High Goddess herself. Walking along a campus, she had survived and made it to secondary school or university, I can't remember. And for the portions of her story that I get wrong, please charge it to my head, not to my heart. This is just strictly off the dome. I wasn't even supposed to be talking to her. She ain't even on my list. But she was discovered walking, and someone was like, "Oh my God, you're beautiful. Would you be interested in taking pictures?" And she's just like, "Well, sure, I'll take some pictures, especially if you're gonna pay me because I'm having trouble making these school fees." So they're like, "Yeah, come, let's take pictures." Somebody takes pictures of her. The next thing you know, she's grazing the runway of Gucci, Chanel, Prada, etc. Okay. And not only are her school fees paid, but she's able to change the life of her immediate family and extended family because she was discovered, because she made the decision to allow for the pictures to be taken and to take the risk and go on the interview and to pursue this career of modeling. Okay. You have stories like that where someone may have been born into a situation where they were starving. Okay. And then they end up being very wealthy. There is a saying, and I'm trying to think of where it comes from, and I can't, but it is African in its origin, and it says, in order to be a king, you must have been a peasant, right? Now, that is an understanding that not karma, but that energy ages and evolves, right? And so by virtue of having started here, whatever the lowest energetic signature may be for a human being, because that's the other thing. I digress. So whatever the lowest expression of energetics may be for a human being, starting there and perfecting yourself, being obedient to your Odu and being obedient to your being obedient to your Odu and being obedient to your taboos and treating people well and doing all those things that you're supposed to do will age you. It will mature you. It will qualify you to experience better as you energetically improve and expand. Again, that's not karma. That's the cosmic nature of what we believe, because we know that energy is never destroyed, right? It only changes form. And we know that we come here only to come back again, okay? Any questions or comments, concerns from anyone out there? All right, Linda. Welcome. Good to see you today.
Thank you. I have a question, and it's about taboos actually, and what Priestess Omowari said. Something that she said. One of her taboos is that she's not to harm another.
Mm-hmm.
So my question, I've been sitting here and thinking, right, so supposing, and it may sound a silly question, but supposing somebody's spiritually attacking her, how does that work? She's not supposed to harm another, but here's somebody in the earth spiritually attacking her.
She doesn't have to do it. She doesn't have to respond to what's happening. She has a godmother. She has people, people at her disposal who will rise to her her aid.
Okay.
So she doesn't have to ever do anything to harm someone. She can just call me, believe me.
I was actually going to say that because of who is in my court. I have particular prayers that I say on a regular basis, and they handle it swift, quick, and in a hurry. I don't have to do anything. I have to be vigilant, do what I'm supposed to do. And as long as I am in alignment, a particular entity, as long as I did nothing to incur the wrath of someone, they will take care of it for me.
And then also understand that if the part of her being in alignment ensures that she be out of harm's way. Does that make sense? If she's in alignment, it's likely that she will not experience attack. If she's in alignment, it's likely that she won't be in a situation where anybody wants to harm her, or if they want to, she's unavailable to them. She's not frequenting the places that they frequent. So they don't even have an opportunity to interact with her. They don't even have an opportunity to get at her because she's doing what she's supposed to do and she's on her path. There is a saying that says that the fat cat will never see the big rat if the big rat is on its path. Okay. So they can be in the jungle, in the forest together, and there can be this big cat that's hungry as heck. And there can be this big, juicy, fat rat. But that rat, that will never be seen by the cat if the rat is on the path that's laid out for him. Every time the cat looks up, the rat will be nowhere to be found. Because the rat is going to be on the path laid out for them by Ifa, the directions given for how to go undetected. That's what your path is. How to steer clear of your enemy. How to steer clear of those things intended to cause you hurt, harm, disorder, dysfunction, delay, etc., etc. Okay.
Yep. It's my first time here as well.
Welcome.
And thank you for the wisdom and the knowledge being shared today. I just really wanted to comment on that, the piece of like experiencing things that's not, we don't necessarily experience things that's just for us. And that's something I'm experiencing in my adult life. Like, took 30 some years to realize, as D Rose was saying, or D Ross was saying, should I say it? Look, y'all can tell I'm from the Shy Lord. I said D Rose. I know. But it's really knowing that a lot of that hardship, a lot of those things that we do, those adversities from childhood that we experience, you know, it's not necessarily like it's to punish us, or that it is, you know, like our lives are horrible or whatever the trauma or the things that we experience, but more so like we're not just experiencing it for us. Like, I've learned that we're to take those experiences and alchemize them, and how do you use it to help others? Because I'm realizing even some of the chronic illnesses that I've encountered and endured and healed through, it's like, oh my goodness, no, it wasn't just for me to heal through this. I am supposed to share this with the collective of folks that are also experiencing this illness, and share with them tools for healing, or what are some of the takeaways, or how to move through it with less, you know, guilt and shame around things. Because I've also realized from just how we're taken out of our power early, you know, from those life experiences, and how it shifts you from believing in anything. When you think about those of us that was maybe raised in the church, and you are living a life where maybe you're being harmed as a child, and you start to feel as though I'm unloved, I'm unprotected, or uncared for, or there is no source, right? Whoever that source is, there is no source, no ancestors. But all while it's like, no, we are connected, and just seeing in ways in which we are taken away from that, or kind of shielded from seeing that because of our life experiences, and just seeing kind of the setup. It feels like a nasty setup. that just keeps us from an early age feeling empowered, or as if, you know, there's more to life than the adversity we may be experiencing from those parents or for those people that's in our environments. So that's kind of
Absolutely.
what was coming up for me through everybody sharing.
Listen to you sounding like a social architect and a priest all at the same time. It is a setup. But remember, we fight not with people, not with flesh and blood, but with principalities in high places, right? It is a setup. You are not intended to step into your power. You're not intended to understand or remember that you are connected to something far greater than yourself. There's no intention for you to ever understand that your ancestors are real, true, and living and present and here only. The only entity concerned with your advancement, with your good health and healing, with your blessings. Your ancestors are the only entity, your egungun, your elevated ancestors, the only ones interested in your success in this physical plane. You're not intended to know that. They teach us that the graveyard is scary. The graveyard is evil. Everything coming out of the graveyard, all them dead folks ain't gonna do nothing but possess you and hurt you and ruin your life. Stay away from the graveyard. Ain't no such thing as ancestors. It's only demons. But then they erect huge outdoor altars, Carnegie Hall, and they charge you a week's salary to go see Beyonce shake her ass on stage at their ancestor altar. They name a highway after their ancestors. They name the library full of stolen shit from Africa after their ancestors and put it at your university. So you're not supposed to connect those dots. You're not supposed to win. Osun Bole.
Hey there.
Hi, welcome.
First of all, thank you for this entire word. I love the conversation around karma because that is such, as you said, everything you said was correct about like the mainstream Western and white supremacy pushed meaning of karma. And it's been rough being a part of that younger generation where like magic is just out everywhere now. It's on social media, it's on TikTok, it's on YouTube, it's flooding you. And the concepts of like karma and etc. It's like, whereas before people would have had to find their kinfolk and practice or otherwise, everything's in the same room. And especially like when it comes to the younger generations in the US, especially trying to practice and trying to connect. And karma is like the first thing that comes up. And it makes sense because of everything you said, like it was a slave tactic. So for Black folks, especially, the first thing that comes up is grappling with karma. And I see so many people in the communities that I've come in and out of just kind of decide, like essentially like go from refusing to acknowledge the rule, like, or, you know, not understanding that the rule of three don't apply to everything, and understanding that karma isn't, the concept of karma, especially in the Western meaning, isn't present in ATR. And they like go the whole opposite direction into like sociopath land, where they're just like, we don't have to worry about anything, any spiritual ethics. Like, we don't have to worry. We could just do whatever we want. And trying to explain to those groups that is not in fact how that works. Like, just because we don't share, or just because we do not subscribe to the white version of karma, doesn't mean that we don't have some form of spiritual accountability within our religion. That's the crazy part. And that's what's been like, I'm like, okay, well, you gonna learn the hard way. I'm like, okay, can we segue from, like, can we acknowledge that the Western interpretation of these things is whack, but then also like maybe revisit the actual definition before we just write it off altogether? Like, can we because of like, we go over to Hinduism or Buddhism, and we start talking about Dharma and karma, you can actually absolutely start to see the math. And it's not some old, like, it's not an eye for an eye type of simplicity, but people want to keep it simple. And it's easier to think, oh, well, it's easier to think that bad people have bad things happen to them and good people have good things happen to them, and all of that other stuff that comes from that same root issue around the slave tactics of keeping people in line. And I had to, as I went through my own suffering, I went through my own stuff, that when I was looking at IFA and ATR, I was sitting there like, I don't know, because I was going through a lot. It's saying, like, you're not supposed to suffer, and the poverty, isn't in your destiny. And the two things that, first of all, like, for me, I started without understanding where to go. Like, I found a lot of wisdom in Hinduism. I found a lot of wisdom in karma and dharma as it actually is. And it's nothing like what white people have tried to warp it into. And then I found, like, that kind of emphasized the continuation, not just your continuation as a soul, but your parents. Like, when your parents come together to create you and what could possibly be coming onto you as a result of that. I started there and was able to kind of be like, oh, okay. Because, like what Ross was already saying, like, you are going through stuff as a baby and as a child, and then you flip on mainstream spirituality TV, and they're like, you chose to be here. You knew what would happen before you showed up, and that's why you chose it. And a lot of us with that kind of childhood trauma, or have seen other people that we love go through shit, we're like, I feel like there's puzzle pieces missing. I feel like this is a Swiss cheese message. Like, there's holes in it everywhere, and you're just expected to, like, take it on. And I had to go through, I'm 28 now, but I had to go through a long period at a much younger age than I've seen any of my peers go through, of trying to figure that out, of being like, okay, what if we look at, like, what my parents were doing before I showed up? Like, maybe that influences. Like, that was huge for me, because it's all on, like, oh, you're your own person, your own soul, whatever. It took me so long to be able to realize, like, maybe my parents made some agreements spiritually and reneged.
Yeah.
Maybe I came in because my parents, and I've had to realize this is also somebody who is planning a family. It's like, my parents set up the energy. It was perfect. It was beautiful. And I was able to get information from my parents about the agreement, the consensus they came to. And as a priest, I can look at that and be like, I know what that was spiritually. I know what that was, because that was them agreeing to that better life, that better timeline, that we're going to take this energy that we're getting from this baby. We're going to ask God for a baby. We're going to ask for this. We're going to do this. And it's very much like having to do any type of spiritual work, where you're like, if you do this for me, I'm going to do this for you. If you do this for me, spirit, then I will provide this for you. I'll take care of the baby. I will improve my life. I'll improve my bloodline. And it didn't sound like that, but energetically and spiritually, that's what that was. And I heard that, and I said, all right, bet, let me come through. And so this landing, because it had the spiritual qualities for it. It wasn't that I didn't see that it could go wrong. It's not that I feel like spiritually, it's not that we don't see that something bad could happen, or that they're human, and that they are fully capable of reneging or making those mistakes or whatever. It's just that, for lack of better timing or lack of better words, and the timing to go into all that, it just is how it is. It just is what it is when you're coming through. That's just the math of it. And that moment, they said, yes, we will. And I said, okay. And I came through, and that energy was set. And then they started to renege, and the spiritual consequences of that started to come in. Okay. And that was something that I wasn't old enough to affect, but I received it. And now that I'm 28 and planning my own future family, I absolutely know what the fuck not to do.
Let me say something to you that you may not have considered that may actually help a little bit. Do you understand that each one of us, how we are, how we relate to our parents, what we do in life, the mirror that we hold up to them is the result of them reneging
Oh
on the
yeah.
promises that they made, right? It is the result of it's the math, and that's all it is. And I was screaming when you were talking about this because we haphazardly lay down together so much, y'all. It's ridiculous. It's insane. We are accidentally having so many children. We are creating sociopaths, psychopaths. We are opening the way for demons of every denomination to come through. We're not considering for a second what it means to create a person with this other person that we are laying down with, y'all. And so we'll be back again, and we'll be unraveling and undoing that shit because we're not doing what it is that we need to do to ensure that we are going to have a good time, that the world is going to be a good place, that we're going to enjoy this experience that we are co-creating together. So yes, as you think about having a child, as you think about doing all of those things, it's very wise for you to think about what it means to create together and what it looks like to create in this moment, in this place, and how that's going to amplify your experience, how it's going to help you to evolve, and what you have to give to a new person so that they can become the best version of themselves and start from a starting place that's further along the road, down the road, than the one that you started at.
Absolutely. Including and understanding like how like I said before, with the struggles that I've gone through in my own life, like it was easier for me to just believe that ancestors and spirit really took me through the ringer with beating the Western version of karma out of me. Like for real, because I went through all types of things and I refused to do left-handed magic because of that slave taught mentality. Like after years and years of looking back on it, it's like that's really all it was. It was a fear that was so deeply inset because I felt like enough bad is happening to me. If I actually take a step that causes harm onto somebody else, if I actually fight back, I'm going to be inviting even more harm onto me. And that is 100% from that church hurt. Even if you don't go to church and you just have Black parents that lived by that, even if they didn't say it out loud, like it's in you. And I didn't know that until, like I said, I had to go through a metric ton just to get to the point where I was like, oh, I have to fight back. Number one. Number two, this happens to people. Like I wanted to be like, no, this can't be happening to me because I'm a good person. So it's so easy to instead think this must be happening to me because I've done something bad. Like it's easy. It's scarily easy to just go there and stay there and then try to form a life off of that. And I did, and it wasn't working. And I started to realize once I was in like super rock bottom that it was like, this happens. Like you think that your ancestors, when they went through this because of oppression or because of society, like you think that they just went through it because they were bad people. Like it kind of like was a huge wake up call to me to be like, okay, there's so many factors. There's intersection, there's spiritual factors, there's a fact, and not like I did something wrong, but like I could look at my family and see like my siblings are 15 years older than me. They went through stuff they did not do right when it comes to like what that should have looked like. Now I'm actually a whole separate second generation, even though we're siblings. 15 years is a whole other generation. And then it was like, I'm going through this and I'm having to do everything in the way they didn't do it. I'm having to do everything the right way so that I can put this to rest energetically for my bloodline and for, you know, what came before me and what I'm trying to put out. And frankly, I couldn't have even learned the lessons and the severity of them, some of those lessons without, you know, going through it. And when I went through it, I was actually very comfortable. I was just complaining a lot. Like when you start to put all those pieces together and you're like, oh, like so much of that suffering was, I hate to say it like this, but essentially like chosen. Like so much of that suffering I chose because, right, like I see some of y'all nodding like, yeah, that me too. Like, yes, like some of that suffering I definitely chose because it was just easier. And realizing that I let myself suffer because it was easier, and then seeing that that's what my parents did too, and that's what their parents did, and that's what my siblings did. Like that was a hell of a wake up where it was like, oh, this can stop. I just didn't, nobody talks about the fact that we're choosing this unless they're trying to do it in a very church hurty way, not in a way that's like, hey, if you adjust your mentality about this, like no shade, not trying to minimize your shit, society be societying, but however, like you're actually really comfortable.
Let me jump in right here because you said
Okay.
something that I have to comment on, and you talked about suffering being a choice. You guys, y'all wasn't rocking with Kanye when he said our ancestors chose to get on that boat, but he wasn't lying because they did. Suffering is a choice. How many of you were hit as a child and it hurt you physically and it hurt your feelings and you couldn't understand why mama who loved you so much was hurting you, and then you turn around and you hit your own kids? How many of you watched your mama get her ass beat? You watched your mama, somebody go upside her head. You watched your mama be lied to. You watched somebody take your mama's money. We learn a lot of things from our mothers, right? How many of you watched your mother suffer and then turn around and do the same things? Lay next to a man you can't trust. Lay next to a man that you wouldn't leave alone with your daughter if you didn't have any other choice. How many of you do those same things that you saw and you watched? And you're not even expecting another outcome. You're not expecting a different outcome. That would be insanity. If you kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something different, you don't even expect anything different because you don't even know that you deserve anything different. And you don't think that it's possible to experience anything different. So you just keep doing the same shit over and over and over again. And then you want to call me and ask for a reading, and you ain't going to do what I tell you to do, no way. But you're not going to even be honest about what made you call me in the first place. And the reality of it is that you know that you are on that bullshit and you need to stop. You know that if you are with a man who is abusive to you in the first days and weeks of the relationship, that it's not going to get better. Most likely it's going to get worse. And not only is it going to get worse and your experience not going to be that great, but if you have little kids and they're there to watch, they're going to learn how to do that same messed up stuff. And so you're actually ensuring that this hell that you're experiencing is just going to continue. That's intentional. That's wicked. That's irresponsible. That's fucked up, y'all. But that's what we do. That's what we do. And that's not karma. That's not karma. That's you dropping the ball. When you have the opportunity to change, when you can say, I was abused as a child, that hurt me. I don't want any other child anywhere in my bloodline or elsewhere to experience this. I'm going to make sure that I don't do anything to cause the suffering of a child, but I also prevent it in any way that I can as I move forward. At least you could do that in your own house. At least you could do that in your own house. You don't have to open a community center. You don't have to start a nonprofit, but you could at least not allow children to be abused where you could see it. Generational curses are not karma. Zadora. Zadora, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'll be having a hard time finding this unmute on this phone. But man, y'all really getting into it in on here today. But I really wanted to say, like, that, so to speak, you know, was really what karma was coming through for me as. That's what in my line of work is what I've learned. It's like, it's really it's not karma, you know, in the way that we've seen it. I've seen it come in your children. I do a lot of parent and child work, and it literally laid the foundation for my parenting group, where I take parents on a journey of understanding that these are those agreements that your parent broke, right? Why am I seeing my child behave like me when she didn't know me in this era of my life? Like, she got them parts that I hid from myself, right? That shadow work that was left undone when she came through the portal. And that piece is so profound for us, and recognizing that even those dreams deferred, right? My mom, it's 5 of us. Baby, her dreams deferred came through in all of her children. We are all living her dreams in one capacity or another. So I really think, you know, that we as individuals, and those of us that birth people on this line, like, that really is the calling. It starts with your inner household, your family, of healing those bloodlines. And it feels like a big lift. I felt that lift as an early child when I knew the harm occurring around me was not okay. I didn't like it. And I did something about it. It led me to become a therapist, led me to become an energy healer, led me to tap in with my ancestors, the Orishas, and understand that, oh, damn, wow, we've been, man, if this ain't the setup from the setup. But it also empowered and showed me just how powerful we are in community, and how one person changed their mindset in the household. It don't matter if it takes 20 years for everybody to get on board, but just knowing that this really is heavy and big work. And it really does, even those adversities that I've had to endure, that I'm sure many of you all have endured in one capacity or another, has led us all here. And I just want to say that I'm grateful for being in this space. I got to go pick up my littles, but thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate everything that was shared here today. And I look forward to reaching out and connecting with you all. Thank you, Princess Osun Funke.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad that you could be here and that you, you know, got something from it. Yeah, y'all. Generational healing, generational, you know, I can't tell y'all enough. Making offerings to the ancestors necessary. You must do it. Do it. Okay? Do it. Talking to your ancestors, praying to your ancestors, pushing energy towards your ancestral line. Do it. It's necessary. It's how we strengthen those bonds. It's how we solidify that oversight that we once had, that led to us being protected and being precise and building empires and all of the things that we did in ancient human history, right? And recent human history. But people talk a lot about generational healing, ancestral healing. And I'm going to tell you, you heal your ancestors by healing yourself. I'm going to tell you, you heal your ancestors by healing yourself. If you want to ensure that the fuckery that influences your bloodline, that plagues your bloodline, if you want to ensure that discontinues, then it must begin with you. You must stop it, and you must be committed to stamping it out wherever you see it. I always tell y'all this and give y'all this little biological tidbit, and it always is shocking to people, but it's something that you need to know. And that is, when a woman, a person with a womb is carrying a female child in utero at 4 months gestation, that baby girl has every egg that she will ever have. What does that mean? It means that when you are carrying your daughter, you are carrying your grandchildren. It means that when you are carrying your daughter and somebody is verbally abusing you, your grandchildren are being abused. Your grandchildren are experiencing that trauma. Your grandchildren are experiencing that elevation in adrenaline. Your grandchildren's DNA is being marked by that elevated heart rate that you feel, that sense of shame, that decrease in life force and energy. That's all becoming part of the DNA of your grandchildren. When you sit on a job where you know you're not wanted, where you bite your tongue, you don't say the things that you feel, and you pretend not to recognize or not to notice those things intended to make you feel terrible, and you're carrying your daughter, you're teaching your grandchildren how to shrink. You're teaching your grandchildren how to overlook abuse. You want to heal generational curses? Heal yourself. You want to ensure that fuckery doesn't perpetuate? Stop it every time you see it. Stop it every time you see it. Put your hand up and say, not in here. Not with me, not today, not ever. Stop it. That's how you heal generational curses. Okay? It's not karma, it's mathematics, it's common sense, it's intelligence, it's obedience. Obedience to natural law. A lot of the things that we put up with are natural law. Like D. Ross said, some stuff y'all just know. It don't even sit right in your spirit. It feels wrong, but we pretend for a number of different reasons. You know, a lot of what we were taught to do was to sit down and shut up. A lot of what we were taught to do to stay alive, y'all, Black mothers, this is on us. A lot of what we did to keep our sons alive historically was teach them to be quiet and sit down, to take the bass out of their voice, to look away when a white person is talking to them. We taught them that because we wanted them to stay alive. But that was a choice, and it came with consequences. And now we have men who don't know how to speak up because they were never taught and they ain't never seen nobody do it. And we have women who are angry about it because there's something in us that makes us know that we are meant to be protected and that we're meant to have, at the very least, an echo, right? If I'm on this microphone saying that's wrong, I need you in the audience saying as hell, that's wrong, as hell, that's wrong, as hell, right? We need to be in unison, but we can't even do that. We're not on the same page. We're not on the same team. We actually work against each other. We think that each other is out to get us and that we're the problem, and so on and so forth. Not a relationship class. It's just about our community and the work that is needed to remove and stamp out these ideas that don't apply to us. Y'all get caught up in karma and think that you can do things that are necessary because it's going to come back on you, and you let all kinds of things, you abide all kinds of destruction and injury trying to be a good person. Mathematics rules this experience. And what I need y'all to understand is that the math says that if you slap me, I am not going to turn the other cheek. I'm gonna beat your ass. Understand that math, okay? That is the math that we need to deal with. Not this be long suffering, you know, this life be over soon, heaven lasts always kind of thing. No, that's not what I'm on. I'm on the mathematics of the universe, where if you pull a rubber band back so far, it's going to snap. And to God be the glory. To God be the glory when that rubber band snaps. It's all part of the plan, right? Pull it if you want to. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope that this talk was helpful and gave you some things to think about with regard to the system of karma and your understanding of it and African spiritual systems. Again, I am Priestess Osun Funke Iyanifa, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
If nobody talks about you, then you